Hey folks, how are you doing? Welcome to Rustin's Boneyard. I hope you are all well. Today I am going to show you how to make a chicken splat. Now, what is a chicken splat? Well, a chicken splat is something that I make for my daughter quite often. It's basically what you could think of as a keto calzone pizza. It's a shell of mozzarella cheese melted around other toppings. Now, why do this? What's the point? Well, with a traditional pizza or taco, or however you want to think of this, what you tend to have is a lot of energy in the form of sugars and fats, but not a lot of nutrients. The actual protein content isn't that great. There's very little micronutrients. And what we're trying to do is to get more micronutrients in to balance that energy. If, as grown-ups, we probably want to be looking to cut back slightly on our energy intake. With children, we don't need to be so cautious in that respect, but we do need to make sure that they're getting a lot of nutrients with that energy. And this is why we want them to avoid foods that are very high energy with no nutrients. Things like most pizzas, donuts, a lot of sandwiches actually contain almost nothing except bread. So what we want to do is to try to maximize the nutrients that they're getting, and this is one way that I do this with my daughter. Now, what I've got here is some beautiful leftover roast chicken. I've got some fresh basil, some zucchini, courgette in the UK, an onion and some nice mushrooms. I've also got this block of mozzarella cheese. Now, when we're choosing our mozzarella cheese, what we want to avoid probably is the shredded stuff in the bag, which is usually mixed with corn flour, and try to go for something that only contains the milk and the rennet. Now, the best mozzarella you get is obviously the balls of soft mozzarella you get in the liquid. If you can afford to use that, that is great. But this is a good compromise. You can usually get it in the supermarket in these big chunks, and it has a little less water content, which makes the process slightly quicker. Now, the first thing to do is to chop up some of these vegetable ingredients and get them frying off in the pan. So let's do that. I'm going to start with my onion. I'm just going to take half of this onion and keep the rest for later. Just going to halve it through the stem, take the tip off, peel the outer layer, and then I'm just going to slice some thin rounds. Zucchini. Now, what I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to take the core out by cutting around it. Don't really want the seeds in there. Firstly, they're going to go mushy, and also, generally speaking, it's the seeds of things that contain some of the stuff that we perhaps don't want to eat too much of, some of the sort of lectins and things like that. So removing the seeds from vegetables is often quite a good default move. So I've just chopped those into relatively small pieces. I'm just going to give them one more little chop. We don't want the sort of filling of this to be too chunky. Now we've got some mushrooms. I've just washed these off, just the caps. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a couple of these and I'm going to slice them into little dice. Garlic. We don't need a lot, just a little bit. You know, this is mainly a kid's meal. Now, it's worth pointing out on that note that if I was making this for an adult, I would look to add things like black olives and some fresh chili. But I don't do that with kids normally. Those flavors can be too grown up for them. So I'm just going to chop this garlic nice and fine. Now, we just need to cook these off in our pan with some olive oil. So we'll add plenty of olive oil to the pan, and we'll get that on the heat now. So that's looking nice and hot, and we can just slide all of this in. I'm going to season this with some salt. Keep it moving, we don't want it to burn. Looks to me like it could use a touch more oil. Now, while those veg are just cooking off, I'm just going to slice my mozzarella into chunks like this. don't want to be too thick, about 5 millimeters, half a centimetre. Now, we can take our roast chicken and add that into the pan. I'm going to add my roast chicken. We want plenty of chicken, you know, this is where most of the protein's coming from in this meal. There will be some in the cheese, of course. Now I'm also going to chop my basil into ribbons. The reason I'm not adding the basil yet is it maintains its flavour much better if it's not too cooked. So I don't want it cooking off as much as the rest of the vegetables. I just want to keep the flavour of the basil in at the end of the dish. Now, if it starts to look dry at any point, just add a touch more olive oil. Just give it a little dash. Now that's looking pretty good to me. I think that's done. It's got some nice colour, everything's hot, the zucchini, courgettes are golden, the onions are nicely soft and starting to take on some caramelisation. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to remove that to a plate temporarily. And what we're going to do now is add our mozzarella into the pan. And what you'll start to see immediately is water emerging. Now, if we do this with proper mozzarella, with the wet balls of mozzarella that you get, the sort of Italian, traditional Italian mozzarella, and what we're going to see is a lot more water. That's absolutely fine. Just wait for it to cook out. So what I'm going to start to do now is try to separate the bits as they begin to melt and spread them together into a sort of cohesive mass. I'm going to turn the heat down a bit. We want this all to melt through on top and form a crust underneath, and we don't want to burn it. It's just looking good. So you can see now it's sort of melted into one single shape, and we can see water still coming out. So it's not ready yet. You can see the colour around the edges, so we can tell that we're forming a crust underneath. It's looking good. I'm going to shake that to stop it from sticking in a way that we don't want. You see, keep it moving. It's kind of like a pancake in that respect. You just want to sort of make sure that it's not adhering to the pan. I'm going to put my toppings back on. I'm going to evenly distribute them over the top. I'm going to take a few little dots of tomato concentrate. I'm just going to put a couple of little blobs in here and there, just to provide the kind of tomatoey flavour. It's going to have a wonderful sort of intensity to it, and you get a little blob of it. Really tasty rush of sort of acidity and sweetness. Now we can put our basil over the top. There's nothing to stop you serving it just like that if you want to. But let's turn the heat off now. Here we go. What we're going to try to do now is to fold this. So carefully, just tease your way underneath with a spatula. Get as far as you can under it, and then just flip it over, roll it like this. You might not get it to match up perfectly, but it will be good. Don't worry. And there we've got our beautiful chicken splat. Give it a go, take a picture, stick it on Instagram, tag me at Rustin's Boneyard. I would love to see what you are cooking. Have a good day, you guys.